Welcome to Feeling Asian, a podcast where two Asians talk about their feelings. I'm Youngmi Mayer.
And I'm Brian Park.
And we have such an amazing guest today.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited for this episode.
This is a spicy episode.
Spicy. Also, can I talk to you about something, Brian?
What's up?
Everyone that's listening to the podcast, they can see in the title who the guest is.
Uh-huh.
Why do we always act like it's a surprise? We're always like, guess who it's gonna be? It's like they clicked on it. Am I stupid? I've been doing, how many episodes is this? And I finally realized
I'm just realizing
they already know. We're like, ooh, don't talk in the intro. It's a big surprise. What's wrong with us?
Well, actually, true. However, this episode, it's actually...
You don't know.
It's a surprise, and it will stay a surprise.
As you know, because you looked at the title, it's our first ever anonymous guest.
Yes.
But before we get to them, let's do our Patreon shoutouts.
Yes. So, listeners, if you like the podcast, obviously, well, this is top of mind. Thank you, everyone who came out to the live show last night.
It was so great.
So fucking fun. Thank you so much. But if you want to support in other ways, instead of going to our live show, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/feelingasian.
Yeah.
Youngmi and I offer different subscription tiers with different benefits. But any donation amount gets you a shout out on the podcast where Youngmi and I try to figure out what a positive affirmation is.
I refuse to Google it. I'm just going with my gut.
Without further ado, our first shout out for this episode goes out to Janet Lowe.
Janet Lowe, you know what you want to get at Chipotle. You do not you just order, and that's why everybody respects and loves you.
Janet Lowe, you've been doing so great in life. Get the extra guac at Chipotle.
You deserve it.
You deserve it.
I know it's extra, that meme. Bitch, I know guac is extra. Sorry, next.
Next, Jay Osaki.
Jay Osaki, I just feel like this person just smells very good. It's my psychic vibe. Smells amazing.
Keep smelling amazing, Jay Osaki.
Keep it up.
Next shout out, Cello Carpenter Price. Cello, you just have amazing vibes. I can feel it.
You're like a stoner white for some reason. I think that grew up in a commune, like loves spirituality, but not in an annoying way.
I was about to say that's
cool
actually bad vibes, but
no, exactly.
You saved it all.
It's the opposite of the good vibes only, dude.
Yeah, you're the opposite of whatever Youngmi
Seriously.
just described. Thank you for donating. Our next shout out goes out to Miyuki Stewart.
I think that this person's really good at doing nails. Is that a racist stereotype?
No.
Good
I don't think so.
Good at anything like little, like beady. That is so racist. I feel like that's an Asian stereotype. Like makes beautiful beaded necklaces.
Miyuki, I think you're very good at crafts, and
yes.
You make tremendous sentimental gifts that all of your friends appreciate very much.
And they love you.
Our next shout out goes out to Alex Kim. You already have a great sense of confidence, but keep going because there are people around you who you may not even realize look up to you, and you are an inspiration in your friend group. So keep that confidence going.
Yeah.
Next shout out goes out to Michelle Ching.
Michelle, you do not have imposter syndrome.
Next one goes to Minjae. Minjae, I'm getting you're an actor. Yeah.
Is that a positive affirmation or cursed?
Minjae, next audition you go on, you're gonna book.
You're a good actor.
You're gonna
book. What we're trying to say.
You're gonna book your next audition. That's the positive affirmation.
Yes, it's gonna happen.
Next shout out goes out to Phil Yu.
Oh God,
we know Phil Yu.
Phil Yu.
He's the Twitter account Angry Asian Man.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Doing the work.
Yeah.
Thank you for following me back on Twitter.
That's the positive affirmation.
No, this is the positive affirmation. You were doing the work from an OG doing the work from way back when.
You were putting a spotlight on issues when people truly didn't give a fuck.
Truly did not give one fuck about Asians. And now they give maybe one fuck. Maybe one, okay?
Phil, Thank you for supporting the pod. Last shout out for this episode goes to Bianca Nicole Elena Malia.
Well, that's like the 9 hottest names on planet Earth. This person is fucking.
You're so hot.
Babe alert.
You want to be addressed by your 4 names, and you know what? You're hot enough to deserve it.
You're the person that walks into the coffee shop and like the barista's like, "Das, hello." Everyone just like, you know, like when someone hot walks into a coffee shop and everyone just like looks away because they're just like
you just destroy anyone's self-esteem that walks past you.
They're just like, "Oh,
but you're so kind. And you don't
how
mean
are you?"
to.
Yeah. Bianca's so hot that she just thinks everyone in the world is an asshole because no one will make eye contact because they're terrified.
Yeah. But Bianca,
thank you
for supporting the podcast.
Thanks for the money.
And once again, listeners, if you like the podcast, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/feelingasian.
And we're going to introduce our guest this week. This is really exciting. This is a Feeling Asian first. Our guest requested to be anonymous.
Oh yeah, but partially inspired from our live show, we are going to refer to our guest this week by the most ABG name, Tiffany Tran.
Tiffany Tran. We had our live show last night, and one of the questions we asked the audience was, "What's the most ABG name?" And they came up with Tiffany Tran. So
yes, and so it's a Feeling Asian first anonymous guest. However, we have a spicy episode this week.
I'm anticipating that this is going to be an extremely popular episode because the topic that Tiffany Tran is here to talk about is one. Personally, as somebody that has a vagina and know a lot of people that have vaginas, I know that this is a huge topic for us. It's anorgasmia, the inability to reach orgasm,
which
Tiffany has struggled with, and she's here to talk about it today. And I'm so excited because I feel like I have a little bit of a history with this, which I don't even think I've told you about, Brian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because you know me as such a freaky fucking I don't know what freak. I got really embarrassed in the middle of saying that.
So listeners, give your ears to Tiffany Tran.
Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here to talk not only about orgasms but primarily about pleasure, which I think should be the focus of our sexual experiences.
Okay, so I met Tiffany because you are a friend of Brian. We can say that much, right? And Brian was telling me your story, and then we met and talked about it over dinner, and it was fascinating. Mm-hmm. And then I was really excited to do this episode. But the other thing that I thought was so interesting about you is that you are like very smart, and like whenever you've sort of dealt with this issue by doing like lots of research and like looking into it, so you know so much about it.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe this is a good time to maybe correct the definition of anorgasmia. So specifically, anorgasmia is not the inability to have orgasm, but having anxiety that you've never experienced one. So it's about this stress surrounding it. There's this sex therapist named Vanessa Marin who actually says that if we were to kind of reframe this term, it might be pre-orgasmia, because there is zero scientific evidence that women are unable to have orgasm, even if they have it. So anorgasmia is really about the stress or like tension behind it.
Oh, so there is no such thing, or there's no evidence to say that there's somebody out there that's unable to have an orgasm.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
Love
fascinating.
Okay.
See, that's the kind of discussion we're gonna have.
But before
me being stupid and being corrected.
But before we dive into orgasms and all that come with it.
Oh my God. Brian, how are you feeling?
I am feeling very proud of us because we just had our live show yesterday, and it was amazing. I think it was our best show yet, and I love tracking the progress and the improvements that we've made to the show since the first one that we did 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm just feeling very grateful that we were able to sell it out, and it was an amazing show. And I'm also feeling relieved because these past 2 weeks have been very stressful for me. Crazy stressful.
You've been struggling, man. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that Brian has been struggling.
I've been struggling. Anyways, how are you feeling, Youngmi?
How am I feeling? Well, first of all, I got my son a Tamagotchi, and he makes me take care of it. So, and he's gonna be so devastated if it dies. So, if you hear any beeping, it's me feeding the Tamagotchi. Everybody, I'm sorry. I know it's not professional, but he will be so upset. I got it to the lips part. You know, when the lips came out, so it's almost fully grown. Come on.
Oh my god, listeners! I don't think I've ever seen Youngmi so on top of anything in my entire life.
Do you hear this?
45 minutes ago it beeped in her backpack and she was like, oh my fucking god, where is it? Stop the Tamagotchi, I need to feed it right now.
My son's gonna be devastated if it dies. So how am I feeling? So I am feeling, you know what, I'm feeling like weirdly so on top of everything. I don't know if you noticed, Brian, but like I just like have been able to get up and do a lot of work this week.
Yeah.
Waking up early. I've been, you know, drinking enough water every day. Just been really healthy.
Damn.
Making nice lunches for my son. You know, our show went really well.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I don't see. So this is like, we were talking about this on the Patreon a little bit. Like, the show is so good. I know it sounds so fucking cringe for me to say that, but the show is like good. It's a good show.
Yeah.
And like, because we go to a lot of comedy shows, obviously, as comedians.
Right.
I've never heard an audience laugh like that. They like are shitting their pants laughing because it's just like a fun concept.
Yeah, one of the audience members told me that our show feels very mature.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, nice. That's a very refined compliment to give to a comedian at their comedy show.
I like how I take it is everyone's laughing. No one gives a shit. I'm just telling dick jokes. And Brian's takeaway is we are immature.
No. She said mature as in like you can tell a lot of effort and planning went into it.
Wait, it feels mature or immature?
Mature.
Oh, I thought you said somebody said it feels really immature.
No. They said mature.
Oh,
like,
okay,
you can
okay.
tell like a lot of effort and planning went into this.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
like it's matured from the last time.
No, first time
okay.
there.
I'm just hearing everything as bad.
I know.
I'm like, what is she trying to say, Brian? Did she say that we're bad? She said that we're stupid? Is that what she said? I can't take a compliment. I'm going to kill myself. No, but like, yeah, the show is like very good. And I'm like, like I said, I saw a lot of comedy shows. It's just like a different format. You don't see shows where like, it's kind of like, you know, like the reason why I dislike stand-up these days is because it almost feels like you go and like the performer has no inherent need to make the audience happy. They're just up there talking about themselves and they don't give a shit if it's funny or not. Do you know what I mean? It feels very, there's this weird, I don't know, this like thing that happened in stand-up recently where I don't think the comedians give a fuck if they're funny. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, we witnessed that with Dave Chappelle and
yeah. No, but not
I
even
know.
Dave
I
Chappelle.
saw
Like
the fun-
all of these comedians.
I saw the funniest tweet with the comedian Tim Heidecker. He just retweeted. Dave Chappelle made this like new video on his Instagram addressing the backlash he received from his recent special.
Yeah.
And there's like 0 laughs and it's just him explaining. And Tim Heidecker retweeted and he goes like, funny stuff. Exclamation point.
Yeah. Like I feel like stand-up is because we watch so much stand-up, right? I'm just like looking at these people and they're just like rich white kids that live in Brooklyn get up and be like, I'm hot. Like, that's my act. Ooh. Tss. And I'm like, okay, yes, you're attractive. What is the fucking, did you think that people were going to laugh at this? And I feel like our show, the entirety of our show is just about trying to make some people laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Two Asians that are hot and Asian.
Yeah. And I'm like, in my mind as a comedian, there's not 1 second that goes by where I'm like, I have to do something to try to make somebody laugh. And like, that's like my job. And I feel like for some fucking weird reason, most stand-up comedians like have fucking forgotten that recently. They're just like, there's a microphone. I'm going to fucking talk about myself.
I mean,
the art
form is inherently that, though.
I know, but at least back in the day they were funny. At least
Yeah.
Chappelle used to be funny. I don't know if people
understand.
remember.
Well,
20
I
years
think
ago, he
because
was funny for a
comedians
second.
in society have been given this like our opinions have been treated as too important for whatever
Yeah.
reason in society. So you know, it's
I
like
hate it when
it's so
people-
self-serious now, and it's like let me see what this comedian thinks about this incredibly nuanced and difficult issue. It's like we're the last people you should be listening to.
The last thing I want is
Develop-
for anyone
do
to
some critical
take
thinking
my
on your
opinion
own.
seriously.
Develop your own opinion and then go see a comedian.
Please don't listen to my opinions. Right. Anyway, so I was just like, I'm just really proud of us, and I feel like it almost feels like because the show's so funny, it's like we're giving back to the community in that way.
I think it's great.
And I think it's great. I feel like it's healing. You know, Asians need this right now, and it makes me feel really good. And I'm really proud of us too.
I'm proud of us too.
Anyway, that's how we feel. How are you feeling, Tiffany?
Before I answer this, can I just make one note? So if you
Yeah.
hear the beeping, it's Youngmi's Tamagotchi, but if you hear typing,
Yeah.
it's because I'm a nerd and I have notes and I'll be like adding things to it or finding throughout this recording. So I'm sorry if you can hear it on the audio.
Let's go.
I love us. I love our personalities. I'm like, I have a beeping Tamagotchi. Tiffany is just on her computer
I just want to
researching.
give true facts. Yeah, so I have references.
Yes.
How
This
am I
is why we
feeling?
love you.
I'm actually feeling really horny, which I know the topic of this episode is like sex and pleasure, but this is an important revelation for me because just to drop more sex facts throughout this thing, there's this therapist, sex researcher therapist named Emily Nagoski. She wrote this book called Come As You Are and specified that there are like two types of desire, spontaneous desire and responsive desire. And because I understand I have responsive desire, which means it's very much based on context. I always kind of felt bad back in the day when I wasn't feeling like super horny out of the blue or something, which is typically attributed, not to give gender stereotypes, but to men. Spontaneous desire, like you get horny quickly. But because I'm seeing this new person and we have like great chemistry, I've been feeling like horny all the time lately, and it's
So
a
you have
fun
a lot
feeling.
more spontaneous desire.
I think it's still responsive though, because let's say we were to break up, then I don't actually know if I would feel that horny anymore.
Oh.
Wow, that's really interesting about the responsive.
I'm like you, Tiffany, where I'm more responsive than spontaneous.
Yeah.
Because
Really?
for sure. Because everything was like it's a lot. Oftentimes for me, it's like context driven. Like
Absolutely.
I'm going on this date, and there is the prospect of sex. Like I never could sometimes you just go to a party and then suddenly people are like, I'm just suddenly so fucking horny right now.
Yeah, that does not happen to me.
That never really happened to me.
Wait, so you would
Like
never...
suddenly you're just horny.
Yeah.
All
You
of
know-
a sudden.
Yeah, you know, like when you were single, you would
Yeah.
never be like, I'm horny, I'm gonna go call this person or go out and try to get laid. You would that wouldn't happen to you?
That feels responsive though. Because it's
Isn't
like
that spontaneous?
Is that spontaneous? I don't know.
Because like I'm horny. Like when I was single, I'd be like, I'm horny, I'm gonna call this person. Like, is that spontaneous?
Well, I also think it's important to note that it's not really a binary. Like most people have a mix
Right,
of
right.
both, but you typically lean more towards one side or the other. So I don't know if
Yeah.
there was like a horny phase, Brian, where you wanted to reach out to these people. So maybe it was a mix of both. But maybe it seems like Brian and I lean towards the responsive side and Youngmi leans towards the spontaneous side. Everything is a gradation.
Right. I mean, I definitely also have felt the responsive thing, like when you're, you know, like sleeping with somebody that you like and like
Yeah.
you're thinking about them and that makes you horny. That would be
Yeah.
responsive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm so excited for you that you're feeling horny.
I know.
Yeah. Whoa.
fun.
Yes, congrats. So the first time, actually, when I first met you, that was before you had your first orgasm. Is that correct? And that was only a few months ago.
Yeah. So.
And so, can you say your age just so?
Yeah.
You know.
I'm 30.
Okay.
And you just had your first orgasm in your life, not including masturbating, any kind of orgasm. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, this is interesting too because sorry to drop all these these other therapists.
No,
so
this
Vanessa
is what we
Marin,
want.
that person,
Yeah.
was basically saying like as you're learning to to have orgasms, it's kind of like surfing. Like when you start learning how to surf, you can like catch waves, but they're really, really small. Maybe so small that it feels like you're just skimming the water. But as you practice and your body like recognizes these sensations, then the waves can get bigger and more noticeable.
Right. Oh.
So that's why like to say first, I don't know, it's kind of unclear, but maybe the first recognizable one where I was like, oh, okay, this is like a big physical reaction that seems to point towards whatever. Yeah.
So that was this year as a 30-year-old.
So this year you're starting to ride the bigger waves.
The big kahunas.
Let's put it
Still
at that.
practicing. Yeah.
You know, I'm really glad that you, and I'm sure this is going to come up over and over again. I'm glad that you put it that way because sex for people who have like vaginas and women like in I don't even know. I'm trying to be inclusive and I'm fucking it up, making people feel worse. Like sex for people who have like, you know, like vaginal intercourse, is different than people with penises. And I think what you just said is important because I think a lot of people probably view orgasms and sex through the male penis way, like, oh, we're gonna have an orgasm like a man does.
Yeah.
But you know how vaginas work is different, and so it's like what you just described, right? You could have an orgasm and you might not even know.
Right, exactly. Like Vanessa Marin also has a podcast called Pillow Talks, and one of them she talks about how these are various signs where you might have had an orgasm even if you're unaware of it, for those who are trying to learn. Because for men it's like this explosive sensation, whereas or I guess people with penises, whereas with people with vulvas it can be much more subtle, and it kind of ranges quite a bit. It's much more bodily and contained. And there's also the ability to have multiple. So it's really just about learning what the spectrum of these sensations are. And I don't know if maybe putting names to it is useful. Maybe that's part of the anxiety thing.
So Tiffany, can you walk us through your orgasm journey? Because I mean, has that always been prescient? Like that you were aware that you never had an orgasm, or suddenly you turned a certain age and realized I've never had an orgasm, I'm going to deep dive? Like, can you walk us through?
Yeah, for sure.
What your journey was like?
So I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't have sex till I was 21. And from then till now, I was always in like serially monogamous relationships. So I only slept with like 4 or 5 people in that decade, and they were always in a serious couple. But then I was aware of this, but didn't really feel, and every year for like a New Year's resolution, I would say like, okay, I'm going to figure this out this year. But then like, I don't know, you have a lot of momentum in the beginning and then you get frustrated or disappointed, and then you kind of let it lapse. And then even the intercourse I was having, which I actually am not going to blame on my partner. I think it's both people it's a learned thing. But like the first person to go down on me wasn't until like 2 years ago. So I think I also didn't know like what to ask for in a relationship or what to like advocate for. And they've learned sex in their own way, and it wasn't being asked for, or I don't know, maybe they were referencing porn or their other socialized experiences. So then they weren't really doing it on their own initiative. But I guess in the past several years, as I was like approaching my late 20s, then I started to feel like there was something wrong, or like way more anxiety about it. Because I think when I was 29, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to turn 30 next month, and I will have been trying to have an orgasm for a decade. And that gave me a lot of like stress. But again, that's about like expectation and framing. And I think I'm still trying to practice how to frame this in a healthy way for myself to kind of remove that kind of shame and anxiety.
Let's say between the ages of 21 till 2 or 3 years ago, when you had a partner who would go down on you, were you were you masturbating or experimenting with masturbation at all? Like to obtain orgasm that way?
Totally. I feel like in the beginning, I would focus on various forms of masturbation, like getting every sex toy under the sun, trying CBD lube, trying video porn or audio porn or erotic like novels. And all of these things, they say like the biggest sex organ is your brain. It's not actually like your genitals. So I think it was... Yeah, it's complicated, right? Like your mind and your body are not detached. And then during the pandemic, I started doing more intentional, like quote unquote guided work. Like there's this online school called the Finishing School, which is like I think it's a 15-week online school. Yeah, I know the name.
Sorry, I love all these puns.
yeah. By Vanessa Marin, for basically people who have never had orgasms. And the first month and a half are all mental exercises. I also looked into the recordings and teachings of Betty Dodson, who recently passed away, but she was the first person to get like a PhD in women's masturbation.
R.I.P. to a real one, Betty Dodson. R.I.P. Pour one out for her tonight.
OMGS is an online school that also focuses on like developing a language and taxonomy around different types of sensations and pleasure to understand like the variance. I saw a sex worker once. Like I've tried a lot in the past several years.
I love this about you so much. I have a question before we get into your orgasm, because the larger orgasm, how you said it during these years of like 21 to 20 to 30, because you said a few minutes ago, it's not you have these little waves, right? Did you I have just two questions about this era. Did you have these little orgasms now that you're looking back and realizing that you did have them, these little orgasms? And then my other question is, which is very different, what was like for like when you said the erotic novels, for me, ever since I was like a young preteen, if I read something erotic, I would get very aroused, and I could orgasm through masturbation. Did you feel sexually aroused?
Well, yeah, of course. I feel like this was the tricky part, and maybe something that we'll go into more later, but a lot of this is about like re-socializing yourself. My current sex therapist talks about how the first thought you have is how you're taught to think, and the second thought you have is how you're teaching yourself to think or teaching yourself to react. So if I feel horny, for example, and I grew up in a religious background that instigated purity culture, then I might feel my first reaction might be to feel shame or to feel dirtiness around arousal. But then my second thought on top of this is like trying to unpack that this was conditioned and that these things are perfectly healthy, and just trying to retrain that pathway. Yeah.
Wow. So what was when you felt like arousal, what was your first thought?
I think it was, I definitely remember various forms of masturbation when I was younger. It was always with like a pillow or some sort of like rubbing surface. But I also remember feeling a lot of guilt when those things would happen.
Okay.
And I also have very vivid memories of like, I was like really young, and I had touched, not even masturbated, but just like touched my vulva, and my mom smelled my hand and she like hit my hand away and told me to go wash my hands. Like these small memories have been starting to reemerge.
That's traumatizing.
I know, and they're so minor, right? I think there's a lot of forms of like explicit and implicit shame. So even not talking about sex in a household is considered shameful. Yeah. So there's a huge range.
Wait, she smelled your hand?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's pretty traumatizing.
I know.
Oh, and so then I guess the second part, or the first part of my question, I guess, do you looking back, do you think you had these little orgasms that you just were unaware of?
Well, it's interesting because when you look up a definition of an orgasm, it's about the release of energy, like energy building and then being released. So it's tricky, right? Like, I actually think in retrospect I probably was, but again, they were so minor that I was confused by them. And then because they're not typically what you see in media or in porn, you disregard it because you think that orgasm is supposed to look and sound a certain way, which I think is really, really toxic for a lot of young people as they now sex ed as porn.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, I'm sorry if I keep coming back to this topic, but I think it's so important and fascinating what you said about like the kinds of orgasms you have, with the vulva and vagina is like, because I wanted to talk about this with you because I didn't really have orgasms until I was like 22 or 23 years old, and at that point I had been having sex since I was like 16, right? So, I mean, that's not that much. I mean, it is kind of a long time, and I think for me it was like a lot of psychological stuff. Like I thought I was having sex for the pleasure of my male partners,
Exactly,
at that point. And so it wasn't even something that I was really exploring. And then after I had a very large orgasm when I was like 22, 23, I look back and I'm like, I did have like smaller orgasms, but I didn't, because the big one was so big, I thought that was the only kind of orgasm that I was, that was real, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So for those people who have pre-orgasmia, is it because there's more to unpack when it comes to the second thought? Does that make sense? Or is that unrelated?
I kind of wonder if this is just, it's irregardless of sex, right? Like we're all trying to unlearn the things we've learned to a certain degree. And in this case, it happens to be specific about sex or just pleasure in general.
Right.
I think with people with pre-orgasmia, there's like three primary things. The first is like psychological. The second is practice. Like it's like learning a language. When you pick this up when you're young, intuitively, then it becomes almost second nature to you. But when you're learning this as an adult, that hurdle is much bigger because now you have expectation. And that expectation is like a huge pressure cooker.
Oh yeah. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. And like the third thing is the types of sex that cis women typically have with their straight male partners.
Yep.
Yeah. Again,
I mean, I have.
Oh, go ahead. Well, just no blame on them necessarily. Like I do think it's like a societal learning problem.
Yeah, we all. There's no like. When we talk about feminism and we're like, oh, the patriarchy, we're not saying like Brian did it. We're saying that we all like learned the system,
exactly.
And that's like, and all women, like all porn is like made for the most porn, is made for the male gaze. So when I watched it as a younger girl, I was just like, not knowing that I was picking up the information that, oh, my role in sex is to make the man happy.
Yeah.
Like I was like picking that up, you know what I mean? Without even understanding that I was doing that.
Yeah.
So can you talk more about the
big one,
the process?
Oh.
Yeah, the big one, and then all the the big one, the big kahuna. Is that racist for Hawaiian? Sorry. I'm sorry. I guess that, and then also you said that you saw a sex worker and you had all these classes. I remember those are like really interesting. Like, can you?
I'm curious about what about the classes and the sex worker is. By like diving into this research, you're effectively like. I don't know. It's like you're like, for me personally, it might even put more expectation and weight on it because now I'm like thinking about it all the time.
Yes, that's key.
So I want to know like how. I mean, since we last spoke, like you had the big one, which I'm so proud of you, and I think it's amazing you did. But like, what was that all like? Like you're researching and you're understanding yourself and like maybe perhaps pathologizing certain things, but I'm did it make it harder even at times be like, because you could put a language to like why you were only experiencing pre-orgasmia?
Totally. I think the big thing for me, out of all the things I mentioned, the finishing school I have like some major critiques with, but I will say it's the only thing that I read about that focused on a mindfulness practice. It's not about sex being devoid from life. It's about like feeling present translates to the bedroom. So for me, it was just about practicing embodiment. I know this starts to get into a certain like territory, but I do think as someone who's quite type A and like motivated and needs a lot of external validation, suddenly having to like try to meditate, try to dance without feeling stupid, try to like really enjoy something without having it map onto some other like structure was really important for me. And also giving yourself permission to be way more selfish. Because again, it's about the performance thing. Yeah.
Whoa.
So hard.
Yeah.
Like, I would feel that, you know, reaching out to a sex worker it makes sense if you're a type A person, because you're literally like penciling someone in to a calendar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that sounds so like there's so much pressure, because then now you're like, all right, I got to make the most out of this, like however much time you have with the sex worker.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like yeah.
And it was a terrible experience.
You told me about this, and I want to hear. Can you tell us? Can you tell the listeners about it?
So there's
there's
an article in The Atlantic called "The Tyranny of the Female Orgasm Industrial Complex," which basically talks about what you're saying, Brian, where because now like women's health is at the forefront of media, it's become an industry, and now there's like a million options, and you try all of them, and you're still left feeling like the expectation is too great, right? So I found out about this guy through that article. I'll use their name, Dr. M. And they also like featured this guy on Slut Ever, that Vice like mini series.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was super awkward. I went to the Upper West Side. This guy met me at a Starbucks. He was like this like 50-year-old dude who like gave me a fist bump. He was like a nerdy programmer vibe. We walked in the studio apartment, and again, responsive desire, was so turned off by the decor of his apartment. I'm sorry this is a thing, but
I get it.
But basically, instead of being specific or like asking me and having like an intake session, he basically said like, this is the process that happens. And I was like, okay, well, you're the professional. So it was like a massage paired with like a full body massage, including vulva stimulation. The first half, I'm lying on my back and like or lying on my stomach, and he rubs my back a little, but it's not pressure. I'm a massage snob, so it was more like rubbing or circulation. There was no pressure. And then within like 5 minutes, he starts like playing with my G-spot, which if you know this, you're not really supposed to penetrate the vagina until it's swollen, until like the lips of the vulva are swollen, and that takes like at least 20 minutes. But again, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a professional, quote unquote.
Right.
He also had a hangnail.
He's a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Ew.
He had a hangnail, so I felt it like scratching me.
Oh God.
And I also am trying to practice how to speak up during the act, which I have a really hard time with. So I just kind of like kept my mouth shut the whole time, even if in my mind I was like, don't touch that yet, or like, you're scratching me, or whatever. So at a certain point, I started crying on the table, on the massage table, and I asked him to stop, and he was like, are you sure? There's 20 minutes left in the session. And I was like, dude, please.
This person.
Yeah.
I like, just along the lines of like what Brian was saying. Sorry to cut you off. I just couldn't handle any more of the story. I'm so sorry. Yeah. It's like, it sounds almost like borderline sexual assault. I mean, I know that you went there consensually.
Yeah.
But like the fact that it's like, just not to like not to stereotype, but just like if you read any fucking book about women
I know.
and sex with women, it's like every fucking rule he's not listening to.
Exactly.
And he's like, he sounds like some sort of like scammer that's just like got into this to like finger women.
But
you know
I
what
kind
I
of
mean?
wonder, I actually wonder that after the fact as well, because there's a lot of massage parlors with happy endings for men, but there's very few for women. So I do think this is
So
kind
he's-
of like a huge hole in the market.
But he's like framing it like a doctor professional, you know what I mean? With like he's like, oh, like,
well, I
is
guess
he?
when
Or,
I said
like,
professional, I meant more like professional sex worker, but I think Dr. M is
okay.
just like his moniker, like
Right,
masturbation
okay.
or whatever.
Yeah.
because like if you know anything, like if you read like one Cosmo magazine from 1993, it
Yes.
tells you like women need time to warm up.
Yes.
You know, like you need to like, it's about like arousal, like your apartment has to smell nice and like stuff like that. Like that's
I
like
know.
what we find attractive, and it's like all the stuff that's wrong. But I just want to touch on what Brian said, where he was saying that like doing all this research and like approaching it like it was like a essay or like a, you know, like something like that,
Yeah.
is like making it harder to achieve the orgasm, because it's like, you know, like when you're talking about that guy, the labia massage guy,
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like so counterintuitive to how sex works. Do you know what I mean? That it's
Well-
like, yeah. I mean, I'm not like trying to obviously I'm not like judging you, because obviously you were trying to approach it in this like problem solving way, but it's like I could see how that. And I just wanted to say really quick, your issues, Tiffany, remind me a lot about how Brian had an issue
Yes.
in his sex life, because he talked about this on the podcast. Like he approached it like, I gotta win, like perfect score, and then that would give him anxiety, and then that led to erectile dysfunction.
So it's
Well,
funny.
yeah. I mean,
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
yeah. Go on. Sorry. Go on, Tiffany.
Well, I was gonna say, part of my like journey was starting to tell friends about it, to kind of like release some shame. And one of the first friends I told was Brian. And during this talk, he was like, he didn't even bat an eye. He was like,
Yeah.
it's fine, I have ED. And then we were both like, oh, anorgasmia in women and ED in men kind of stems from the same source, which kind of is anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of you have the same issue, I feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just the curse of expectation.
Right. Well, that's why I asked you, like, when you studied and did this research, because I did the same with erectile dysfunction, and it, like, I had this language to sort of process and make things make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But even when I was with sexual partners, it would still, like, I would so badly hope that would suddenly just be fixed and cured, but instead I just have this vocabulary rattling in my brain, but it was the same outcome of not obtaining an erection.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I'm curious for you, like, it sounds like, okay, you did the work, you studied, you did these classes, you went to a sex worker, and things were still not quite clicking for you. When did it, what was like, when did things start turning around?
Well, the thing
Like,
is,
when did it start clicking for you?
I don't want to frame it as like a before and after, because I do think it's an
Okay.
ongoing process.
Mm.
Right? Like, I had 2 orgasms with 2 one-night stands, which I'll rewind back to in a second.
Wow.
But I have never given myself one to this day. And,
To this day.
And
Okay.
even with the person that I'm
Wow.
with, we've had sex for 2 or 3 months now, and I've never had an orgasm with them, even if arguably I care more about this person more than these 2 random guys. So
Right.
it's
Oh.
very complicated. Like, I'm still trying to figure that out too. And I do think
Right.
it's a journey.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like one day you unlocked it and now you're just orgasming all
Yeah,
over
no
the place.
way.
It's like it wasn't like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I do think that the number one thing I've taken away is it's when you think about wanting to have an orgasm, it's just not going to happen. I think it has to be
Interesting.
focusing on giving pleasure and receiving pleasure. And that in itself
Yeah.
should feel great, because why wouldn't we
Right.
want to give someone pleasure for a long
Yeah.
time, or vice versa?
Right.
But when
Yeah.
it's like, I only want to give someone pleasure with the goal of them having an orgasm, then that's just pressure.
Yeah.
And it's really stressful.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I think it's different because most of the partners I've been with, like, they associate orgasm with sex. Like, what's the point of having sex if you don't come?
Yep.
But I think it's
Right.
different if you start thinking about it as like a pleasure focused thing. Like, I love massages,
Right.
even if there's no
Yeah, me too.
goal. You know? So
Yeah, I
I'm
just,
trying
like-
to put them in the same bucket.
Is there a sexuality where I just bring people over and they massage me and then leave? Because that's what I want. Don't whip your dick out.
Okay,
Massage my sore ass shoulders.
so earlier
I
this
feel like
summer.
Tiffany knows.
I know, I think I've already told Brian this.
You,
When I moved back to New York this summer, I joined this app called Field, which is like a sex app, which arguably Tinder is too, but it's implicit. Field is a
Right,
sex
right,
app
right.
where your profile, you like write what types of sexual things that you want.
Okay.
And the first time I joined it with Brian, we were like, okay, only want someone to give me a massage and go down on me, and that's it.
Oh, you wrote that?
I think didn't Brian help me write this?
I
don't remember.
I don't want this out.
Brian's like,
I'm gonna edit this
allegedly.
out.
Yeah, but so this happened. This guy came over within 2 hours, did that, and then left. And it was honestly really awkward, but also kind of liberating. Like, wow, I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a Rumspringa. Like, I can really do whatever I want with this thing.
Wait,
A Rumspringa.
you did this after our dinner
That's what I mean. Exactly.
with young me.
When we
when we
first
went-
met.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it because we were talking about dating apps during that dinner?
I think it's because I was
Possibly.
telling Brian, like, oh, I have anxiety. I feel like I can't be in a real relationship until I figure this thing out, because it's like a burden to bring into a new relationship. And Brian's like,
I'm like trying
no,
to give myself
that's not
credit for
true.
this. I'm trying to give myself credit because I feel like during dinner I was like, I just like fucking hook up with people and blah blah blah, and I don't care.
Totally, but I think that's a
I'm
big
giving
part of it.
myself
Like,
credit.
I never had that. I never had a promiscuous period until
Oh,
arguably
nice.
then that summer.
Can we please finally, just like your orgasms,
Oh yeah.
can we talk about the orgasms,
Yes,
please?
yes.
What was that like? Why were they like, what was a marker that made you think in your head, this is it? Or
Yeah.
just tell us all about tell us how it felt.
So again, through Fields, 2 different people, one night stands. I intentionally do not drink during these because, according to this book, you're not supposed to.
Okay.
The first person was a pleasure-based sex educator. So, I mean,
Okay.
they kind of had a leg up. But
A leg up. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
it was interesting because they were actually...
My leg up. Yeah.
Yeah, they were also they worked as a pay-for-play dom, which we weren't doing,
nice.
but they like, I don't know if people have a misconception about BDSM, but it's really basically a physical contract, right? Like the dom does not have the control, the sub does. The dom is only doing what the sub allows them to do within like a
Right.
certain schema.
Right.
So before we did anything, we basically talked for like 30 minutes to an hour about what I liked and what I didn't like and what I've tried and what I would like to try. Which is cool because you don't do this on a first date.
Right.
So basically I was like, I'm curious about impact play. Like, partners have spanked me in the past, but they were kind of timid about it, or it was really short or whatever. And then also telling them about my experience with like not having that much experience with receiving oral sex.
Mm-hmm.
And then this person was like, very kindly, he was like, it's really frustrating, and I feel sorry that you've only slept with people that have a very heteronormative view of sex, because it's separated
Yeah.
into foreplay and main play.
Yep.
Right? Everything is building to PIV, which is penis and vagina, or like intercourse. And And if you think about each phase as a different section of sex, then you're basically having sex multiple times in one night. Whether that's giving someone a blowjob or getting head or impact play, like those are all distinct chunks. So then you don't feel rushed to move on to the next step. So this for me was really, really, really nice because one of the primary things I struggle with is liking something and then feeling like they move on too quickly from it. And then feeling insecure about asking for more.
All right. So now I can go to my guy friends and be like, yeah, I had sex 10 times last night.
Yeah. They, I don't know, spanked me for like 30 minutes and we didn't move on to the next. Also keep in mind, it's not like incessant. There's like a rhythm to it. Right. It's like teasing, blah, blah, blah. But there was nothing penetrative. No fingers, no tongue, no dick, like just build
Were they
up.
spanking your butt?
It was kind of a mix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But for me, I find this very meditative. Or like it helps me stay present.
Yeah. I can see how that, yeah.
And they also said they wouldn't move on to the next thing until I gave them a cue. So there was really no pressure. I was like, oh, if we did this for the next hour, then whatever, I'm steering the ship. Whereas typically when someone else is directing, then they like shift to the next thing. Yeah, so then after I felt like very warmed up, then they went down on me for like another 30, 40 minutes, which was great. Nice. And again, there was no penetration still. This is like an hour in.
No fingers.
No fingers, no dick,
Okay. And then what happened?
So then
is that when you orgasmed?
Yes, I basically had like this like rolling body orgasm that moved from like my head down to my toes and lasted for like maybe what felt like 5 minutes. It felt long. And during this time, they basically just like, they said they backed off and just stopped touching me because my body was like having a moment. And they, you know, and I didn't know what he was doing because I was like in my own space.
Right.
Wow.
It was really, yeah, but then afterwards I was still kind of confused, right? Because it's not like an explosive orgasm that I'm used to seeing. So again, still trying to unpack this thing. And in Tantra, there's this type, I forget what it's called. There's this type of orgasm where your energy doesn't get released. It just moves around the body, which is why you can have prolonged orgasms in Tantra.
Yeah, I would describe it as energy moving around my body, not released.
Exactly.
When I have an orgasm.
Yeah.
I have like such intense orgasms that like I like black out basically.
Yeah, I kind of felt
I've seen like the universe. Like I'll see the entire universe.
Yeah.
And I've also done this thing, this is really funny, where like kind of like what you were saying, Tiffany, like where I will like, you know, have you ever seen like a horny little dog just hump in the air? Like, like, you know, like that?
Yeah.
Like I'll do that thing where I'll like have such an intense orgasm that I'll bounce off someone's like dick or hand or mouth or whatever, and then I'll just be humping the air like a little fucking Maltese.
That's incredible. Wow.
And then I'll like I don't know. It doesn't look cool, but it happens.
Yeah.
But so that was the first orgasm.
Honestly,
and then you tell us the rest of the night. Sorry.
We then had like PIV like 2-3 times, which was fun. But again, for me, PIV is more like fun, and you feel close, and like it's energetic, but it's not necessarily like. I think I'm very far away from having an orgasm through intercourse.
I've recently started having orgasms, not like maybe just a few years now, through intercourse, and it's like really, I don't know how it happened. It just came out of nowhere.
It's not through the friction though. Like if you're on top and your vulva's rubbing against their like whatever.
No, it's the inside.
Interesting.
But also, this might be TMI. I'm sorry, Brian's sitting next to me. I know this is awkward, but I have to say it's the inside of my like vaginal canal.
Yeah.
But when I was like, this is TMI, but I know a lot of people go through this and no one talks about it. But when I was a kid, I would masturbate a lot, My friend is a kindergarten teacher, and she said that most kids do, so I don't feel bad
it's
about
very
it.
healthy.
And but how I was doing it was like smushing my vaginal canal muscles.
Yeah, the Kegels.
Smushing them together.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, like I like developed like a sensitivity or something.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, but a lot of people don't have that. Is what I learned later. Like that's not common.
Well, apparently.
Yeah.
People with vulvas and penises should be practicing Kegels daily, because not only does it help with like the muscle there, like it'll prevent incontinence when you're older, like peeing yourself when you're older, but also for men it keeps you hard longer. It's just a muscle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I get aroused from doing Kegels.
Me
like
too.
That
absolutely.
is how I masturbate.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Really?
Similar to you, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, in elementary school, you would do these like gym exercises just to assess your physical fitness. So you do like, how many jumping jacks can you do? How many push-ups can you do? Without fail, anytime we had to do pull-ups, I think because I was like activating my core so much or whatever, I would always get a fucking boner. And so before I could do the maximum amount of pull-ups, I would have to let go always because I would be too embarrassed.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay, so then you had P and V a few times.
But then with your second big,
it was literally at that point I was
orgasm.
like, oh, this format works, and I asked for the exact same thing.
Similar format.
I did,
yes.
and he did the exact same thing as the first guy.
Oh.
And it happened again.
Okay.
Oh, so a different person.
Different
same
person,
format.
but I was like, okay, this happened to me. Can we do it like this? And then when I tell you, we move on to this, and then after that, you can do whatever you want. Cause like I feel great. Yeah.
And then you said your partner now, you haven't had an orgasm with them?
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about. And And I don't know why. I don't know. I think it's because when it's the feeling selfish thing. I think because I didn't know these other people, I was literally like, this is what I want.
Like,
and if they don't like it, they can kind of leave.
Yeah.
It is transactional though. Like we met on a sex app. And then with this new person, it's different because now I'm like, is he having fun? Does this feel good for him? Is he bored? Does his jaw hurt?
Yeah, for sure.
And
the
it just like
so different.
kills it. It's still fun, and we have a lot of chemistry, but it's a lot of pressure, you know, because it prevents me from like advocating primarily for myself, which is a thing I'm trying to like, you know, practice.
I honestly feel like I've only recently started having orgasms regularly, and I would say like in my early 30s, right? And I think a lot of it, I think what I'm hearing, especially with your story and the research that you've done, is that so much of it is psychological.
Yeah.
And I think it really coincides for me personally, the orgasms being me giving myself room to be more selfish.
Exactly.
That really coincided with having orgasms all the time and not really giving it a shit. I'm saying that wrong. Like caring about the other person, but caring about like how we are interacting and connecting with each other, not being like you have to come and like I'm gonna like do like put on a little lingerie and act stupid. So do you know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to like connect with this person instead of like doing this weird thing that maybe I learned from society and porn, you know, or like daddy's little kitten or whatever the hell, you know, like so I think it's a really psychological, I think.
Definitely.
Well, I just want to take a moment and say, Tiffany, that I am feeling very inspired by you right now.
Good.
Because I remember, you know, our first dinner where you shared this to me you shared this about yourself, and but hearing you talk about this process, journey, whatever you want to call it now, the one thing that I really admire about you is that, let's say these things that might normally bring up shame or this self-doubt or this questioning behavior of like, why am I like this? I noticed that you just see these as opportunities for more practice. Like, we can practice this. And I think that's something that I can be better about in myself. And hearing you talk about it openly in this way is very inspiring. So I just want to say thanks.
Thanks, Brian. That's so sweet. Yeah. I feel like there are good days and bad days, right? Like some days I'm like really motivated and I want to work on this and like advocate for myself. And there are other days where I'm like, I feel like less lovable because I feel like I have a dysfunction.
Aww.
You know? So I think it toggles between
You
those.
don't.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, how you feel like you have a dysfunction, because I just want to say, I forgot if I said the stats already, but I know we were talking about it. Like, I think it's the majority of people with vaginas, or people that identify as women, 80% can't reach orgasm during PIV. 80%.
Yeah.
Have never had an orgasm. And I think you said something about a statistic about 30 to 50% of people that,
I have the stats in front of me. So according to Kinsey, 30 to 50% of women have not had orgasms, period. So with 50%. A partner or on their own. 30 to 50%.
Wow.
Again, this is all, keep in mind that these are like studies of contained groups of people, but still, I think in this group there was like 10,000 women or something.
Right.
And this might change by demographic and region, but generally it's quite high. And I think when I started talking about this with friends, so many friends told me the same thing. And it was shocking because I felt like so isolated, like I was broken or something. But it's so common, and I just wish more women knew it was very, very common.
Well, that's why I wanted to say that when you said the dysfunction thing and feeling like you can't be loved, because this is a huge issue for a lot of people. And if if you're listening and you experience something like this, it's not, that doesn't mean anything, and I really hope, and I know that people are going to listen to this, and this is going to mean a lot to so many people to hear this story, because like what you were saying, it felt really isolating. You feel like you're alone and like you're failing somehow, but you're not.
Yeah. You're really not. Yeah. And I honestly wish, like, I feel lucky that I have a group of friends, like, of all gender orientations that I can talk about sex openly with, because I do think it needs to be like a wider topic of conversation. I think, especially for straight men, I feel really bad that my straight male friends are unable to talk about this with their other straight male friends, unless it's kind of like in this competitive, like, locker room talk kind of way, rather than really trading, like, you're supposed to go down on them for like 20 minutes before, like actually things that you don't learn in porn. And I wish that was more acceptable, but maybe it will start to turn that way.
Well, Brian is openly talking about it. He's been very open about his struggles, which, we have gotten a lot of DMs about that, right? Whenever Brian talks about that. And it's like, it is important. And I think it's important for, like straight men to discuss this, because, if they're not listening to the partners that they're having sex with, who, usually if you're straight, obviously is a straight woman, you're getting your information from other straight men, and they're saying things like, huge dicks. You gotta last for 5 hours. You gotta fucking like that. That's the, and every day a woman is like, dick size doesn't matter, but men are like, nope, my friend Ted said that. And it's just like, will you please listen to the people that you're having sex with instead of your fucking buddy boys down at the fucking bar, right? Like, it's just like, no.
Well,
and then they're like shaming each other.
When you think about having intercourse for like 30 or 40 minutes, like, that hurts. That's too long. But if you think about sex as like the sequence of a lot of other things, then it doesn't really matter like how long you're able to last or not, because you're prioritizing these other things that also give a lot of pleasure.
So true. But I also just want to say I have a huge penis and last really long. Just for the record.
Wait, you have what?
Brian said he has a huge penis and he lasts really long. Just for the record.
So true.
Just for the record.
Like,
okay, just so you know.
Just so you know.
Not that it means anything.
Not that it means
Not that it matters.
It doesn't fucking matter. That's some male gaze bullshit.
Wait, can I give a few other stats?
Please.
Of course,
Rattle them off.
Okay, so Kinsey says 30 to 50% of women have not had orgasms. Vanessa Marin, that sex therapist, says in their research, which also has a lot of like field work, is about 20% of women, which is still high, 1 in 5 people.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Then during PIV itself, assisted, referring to like using a toy or using your hand on the clit, still only 50 to 60% of women come during assisted PIV. Unassisted, orgasm
Just
rates
dick.
drop to 20%. So
20%
it's
of
just
people.
like, yeah, I just wish people.
I'm in that 20%, everyone. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Only recently, only like a few years ago, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a huge issue. And no one talks about it because no one gives a fuck about fucking people with vaginas.
Yeah.
No one talks about people that the UTI epidemic.
Oh.
That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Everybody that has a vagina has a UTI like twice a month. No one gives a shit. You think the government cares about? No.
Yeah.
Oh my
But-
god.
I do think.
But Tiffany, I think.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Go on.
Brian.
Oh, continue.
No, go
No,
on,
what were you
Tiffany.
Well,
saying?
just the last thing. I do think it's important to change the language we use to talk about physiology. So I was gonna give like a quick physiology lesson.
Give us
Give us the
Okay,
physiology lesson.
Technically, the vulva is everything, right? The vulva is the lips, the clit, the vaginal canal, etc.
Right.
The clitoris actually looks like a wishbone. It's not just the head that you see at the top of the vulva. It has legs that extend down the sides of the labia. And then what we see as
They
a
sure do.
G-spot is like the underside of the clit. So it's in the same location as the top, just underneath the skin. So there's
Oh, that's the G spot? Oh
Yeah.
my god. I thought the vulva was the outside, like the labia, and the vaginal canal was the inside. But the vulva is the whole
the vulva's
thing.
the
vaginal
entire
canal.
thing. Yeah.
And okay, man.
yeah.
I didn't even know.
So that's what I
didn't
mean.
even
They
know
don't
what-
really teach you
Yeah.
this, and it's really sad. And I think the other thing is like, in porn, we're taught that like squirting, leg shaking, being wet is you're either horny or you're having an orgasm, and that can be the case, but it's also not true. So just because your partner's wet doesn't necessarily mean they're horny. They could also just have a healthy vulva, which is naturally wet. So you're trying to wait for engorgement, which means like the clit head will get hard. It's the same. It started off as the same group of cells as the penis in the womb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
I remember reading about that and then looking at like clits, like I googled it to like see it in my head and penises, and then I was like, oh, I can see it. If you look at if you break it down like that, you can
Right.
see how the clit is just like a mini
Penis.
penis.
Exactly. Yeah.
It looks just like a uncircumcised penis. It's so interesting.
Mhm. And like even people with vulvas who take tea, their clit just gets bigger.
Yeah.
So it'll become like, I don't know, an inch or something. But it's all the same grouping of cells. It's just spread out across the vulva.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Wow. So
Holy
much
cow.
information about.
But however,
Yeah.
I think an important note to reiterate from this episode, and Tiffany said it so succinctly, is that it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
that's a good metaphor for vulva orgasms. It's not we won. We like penises. We did it.
Yeah.
For, people with vulvas, the sex is just like rolling. It's down. It's like up and down. It's orgasmic. It's explosive sometimes. Sometimes it's quiet. It just keeps going forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and sharing so much about yourself
Thanks
and
for
your
having
orgasm
me.
journey.
Yeah.
But before we let you go, what is something that you're proud of?
I think that in the past, like, I needed a lot of external validation and whatever, accolades and this school and this thing. And I'm just kind of proud that I'm getting more internal validation through these various practices. Like, mindfulness is really important, being present, feeling really embodied at times. Hopefully I can extend this like into the future, but I think this is kind of the biggest takeaway I've learned from like all of these different experiments and practices that I've done. Yeah, but also feeling like it's ongoing. There's not really an end, which is something I'm trying to get more comfortable with too.
Yeah, what a great lesson. What a great way to look at life. And also what a great thing to be proud of. That's really hard, especially, you know, this is it's not only directed at Asians, but for a lot of Asian people, we're raised, you know, to put external validation above our own internal validation.
Absolutely.
And like to unlearn that is very hard, and I'm very proud of you.
Yeah,
Tiffany.
Thank you so much.
I'm proud of you too.
Well, I guess we don't want anyone to look at we're gonna ask you for your social media, but you don't want any of that.
Well, for our listeners, if you have any questions or if you want to comment or leave feedback regarding this episode, you can DM us on the Feeling Asian Podcast Instagram, or you can email us at feelingasianpodcast@gmail.com, and we will be sure to forward your messages to Tiffany Tran.
Is that okay with
please,
you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then you can just reply to
Yeah.
us. Or you can just set up a fake email, Tiffany Tran at abg.org. Tiffany Tran talks orgs.org. All right, what about you, Brian? Where can our listeners find you?
You guys can find me on socials at It's Brian Park. And what about you, Young Me?
YM Mayor. TikTok is Young Me Mayor. Follow our podcast at Feeling Asian Podcast on Instagram. And what else are we on? TikTok
We're
for
on
clips.
everything.
And also we have a YouTube channel, Feeling Asian Podcast, and our Patreon. If you really like our podcast, it would mean so much to us. We did buy a Asa Akira fleshlight, and it really put us in the hole. We spent all our Patreon money for our live show, and we gave it to one of our wonderful audience members who won a game.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you get to experience if you come to the live show. So
Right.
please donate to our Patreon so we can buy
we
more
need
gifts
it.
for you. Patreon.com/feelingasian.
Okay, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.